T-Wolves losing overtime in Cleveland, 113-104. I got the expert, Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. He's the man, Jack Borman. He's on X, at JRBorman13. And Jack, before we jump into all the action, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, man. Wolves on the back end of a back-to-back after that, last night's thriller versus the Pacers in a game that, the world's still talking about last night, really. But they travel to Cleveland tonight, take on the Cavs in their second game without Cat, who, of course, he's out at least a month with that torn meniscus, as we all know by now. Still plenty to discuss on that front a little later on. First things first, though, another dramatic kind of back and forth game. Went into overtime tonight. Wolves' second overtime game in the past week, by the way. Remember that Kings game last weekend. That went into overtime as well. And in OT, the Wolves, just kind of like they did versus the Kings last weekend, they seemed to just run out of gas at the end. And I'll tell you what, Jack, I don't like to come on here and say this very often. I think I've brought this up maybe 2 times all year, but unfortunately for the Wolves, tonight's game was ultimately decided by the refs, or at least that's how it felt when I sat there and watched everything unfold. There was some really questionable calls, some even wilder no calls, specifically, though, at the end in overtime when it mattered the most. Anthony Edwards was fuming by the end of this one. 113-104, though. That's the final. Probably doesn't tell you how close this game actually was. But kick us off, Jack. I mean, give us your biggest takeaways from another OT thriller in which the Wolves just fell short in.
Yeah, first of all, I feel terrible for the Timberwolves. They've been through a ton in the last 36 hours.
Yeah, they have.
And they've fought incredibly hard. They've played incredibly unified and together. And it's certainly admirable given, all the adversity that has come their way in the last 36 hours and the way they've responded to it. I think fans should feel nothing short of proud of. But maybe our sponsor, LinkedIn Jobs, can help Natalie Sago and Scott Foster, get some different jobs, because tonight was an absolute disgrace. Jarrett Allen had a career high. What was it? 33 points tonight. He averages 3.9 free throws per game.
Come on.
3.9. He has 21 free throws tonight, career high, to get his 33 points, which is a career high. The Cleveland Cavaliers had more made free throws, 24, than made field goals, 16, in the second half and overtime. That is ridiculous. I mean, meanwhile, you want to go, what the Wolves finished at here. So Cleveland shot 22 of 46 in the first half. In the second half and overtime, they shot 16 of 42.
Come on.
Okay. So that's like 38. I don't even know. Like 16 of 42 is 38% from the floor. Their offense, they couldn't do a damn thing in the half court, in the second half and overtime. And they got bailed out on so many plays, whether Jarrett Allen was just being a baby, flopping around, not even fighting for position, being off balance, not using his strength to his advantage, and just falling over on the ground when you have guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels just fronting him in the post, or just falling over and throwing up a shot, and they get Rudy Gobert for 2 or 3 ridiculous ticky-tack fouls and eventually fouls out of the game on a call that Scott Foster, you could very clearly see from the camera angle. He had absolutely no viewing angle of what just happened. And then, I can't even blame Rudy Gobert. Like Rudy Gobert, that tech that he got for getting fouled out, flashed the money sign at Scott Foster.
Oh, come on.
That ended up being
you could go back all the way to Ant's first technical when he got called for the tech after the slam dunk jam. He wasn't staring him down. Yeah, he showed a little emotion. Come on, man.
You get dunked on, you deserve to get flexed at. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. And guess who Ant dunked on? And guess who Scott Foster covered for? Jared Allen. I mean, it's just ridiculous, man. I feel so bad for the Timberwolves players because they fought their tails off in this game. You could tell they were very clearly tired, and Cleveland was tired too. This is the third game in 4 nights for Cleveland, and it's obviously the second end of a back-to-back for the Timberwolves. Their second leg of a back-to-back played in 9 days. That is like ridiculous.
That's insane. Have you even ever heard of that? I mean,
I can't. I mean, Rudy Gobert said he's played in the league 9 years now, or 8 years, whatever it's been. He said he's never had that before.
Wow.
I get a lot of them are at home, but still. I mean, Chris Finch was sick and wasn't even coaching in this game because of how much of a toll all this stuff is taken on him. He's not even out there playing. I mean, just for the Timberwolves to get cheated out of this game the way that they did, they got every possible call go against them in the fourth quarter and overtime to put Cleveland in a position to stay in this game. And the Timberwolves, despite all of that, somehow were able to keep their cool and continually fight and stay together and scratch and claw together enough baskets to stay in the game and be in a position to potentially win the game. And, you know, outside of that, I think Naz Reid deserves all the credit in the world for everything that he did in this game. He had a career high 34 points on 10 of 18 shooting. He was 7 of 11 from 3, 7 of 8 from the free throw line, and also had 3 stocks in this game, which was great. Exactly, Jeff. I mean, that's the crappy part for Naz Reid, right? I mean, he just has to have such a sour taste in his mouth for the way that Natalie Sago and Scott Foster ruined this game. Natalie Sago swallowed the whistle so many times and was so quick to call it whenever the Wolves were playing defense, which was utterly ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, this is a great point. This was, I mean, what I was going to bring up next is that Naz Reid did not play from the around the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter to inside of 4 minutes to go in this game. And the Timberwolves did not score a field goal from the 6:11 mark of the fourth quarter until Naz Reid made a 3 with
And who, while you're looking that up, who was in there for Naz? Was it Kyle Anderson?
It was Kyle
rotation?
Anderson. Yeah. And I mean, I've been largely pretty high on Kyle Anderson because I feel like most people just do not give him enough credit for how insanely good his defense has been for the majority of the season. But he was guarding Dean Wade. And the Cleveland Cavaliers were just clogging the paint and sagging off of him and not allowing Rudy Gobert to make any type of impact on the roll with him out there. And I just did not understand why. Naz Reid was the Timberwolves' best player by a mile tonight, and he sat for the majority of the fourth quarter. I just thought that was a huge swing and a miss, considering that, you know, Naz didn't even play all that much last night and looked very spry compared to everybody else. I mean, Naz Reid was 7 of 11 from 3. Everyone else was 1 of 19 from 3 tonight. And the fact that you didn't, and he was the only guy that could consistently create his own offense off the dribble. And they had him out for the majority of the fourth quarter when Cleveland really started to gain some momentum there with all the free throws that they were getting. I thought was just, you know, unfortunate. And I understand that Mike Inori was put in a pretty tough spot coaching this game in for Chris Finch. And I know that all the players really love him and really trust him and certainly wouldn't question anything he did, but it's kind of a tough spot when you want to play someone like Naz Reid over Kyle Anderson, who started this game, expects to close this game after closing last night. And maybe you just don't want to rock the boat. I don't know, but it was just unfortunate. And I think getting another 2 or 3 minutes of Naz Reid into that fourth quarter certainly could have proved to be a big difference, considering that Naz had 5 of the Timberwolves' last 7 points and had an incredible stop in isolation on Darius Garland out on an island to at least, you know, give them a chance to win this game at the end of regulation.
And again, those last 60 seconds, I mean, yeah, a lot of people are going to talk about overtime, but those last 60 seconds, do you remember even? It feels like so long ago now, but it was just the last 60 seconds, man, of regulation, jam-packed with a lot of action. First off, as you mentioned, Naz Reid, I mean, makes that unreal bucket gets his career high in points. That was awesome. Rudy Gobert, the kind of really iffy, and that's being generous, I think, that technical foul. Cavs get a chance to win it. It's tied up 97-97, 27 seconds left. Naz Reid, monster block on Garland. Wolves have their chance, 2.2 seconds. Micah Nori, again, filling in for Coach Finch. This is what you dream of for him, right? Tries to draw something up to win it on the road at the end. What'd you think of that play, the execution, just I guess in general, the final 60 seconds of action? Because looking back, that was probably their best chance at winning it in crunch time, knowing what we know now about the refs.
Yeah, I didn't love getting the ball to Ant in the corner. It's not a place that he derives very much of his offense from, and it's not really a comfortable position for him. I was a much bigger fan of what they had drawn up before Cleveland used the foul to give, where they had Ant in the backcourt and had him with a full head of steam running towards the basket. I thought that was a much better idea. And I would have liked to see them try to do something like that again, maybe with Ant or Naz Reid, or, try to get something going towards the basket, because it was very clear all game if none of these guys outside of Naz and Nikhil maybe had any type of legs tonight. And Ant is obviously tremendous. He was tremendous in clutch last night, but I just don't know what about any part of his game, especially in the second half, inspired any level of confidence in his ability to make a shot. And that's not at all a dig or a shot at Ant. He delivered a superhuman performance last night, and I don't know how anyone could expect him to have any type of legs after that. I'm shocked he even was able to suit up and play tonight after falling on his wrist, hitting his head, having that ankle stuff, falling on his hip. None of this game, I don't think you can place an ounce of blame on Ant after what he did last night. But I would have loved to see the Timberwolves try to get the ball to Naz Reid at the end of the game, maybe with a head of steam going towards the basket. And, it's a tough spot, obviously, for Micah Nori. Shots at the end of the game, I feel like NBA players shoot less than 35% on those shots. So, it was better than what Chris Finch drew up a couple times in late in games when the Timberwolves had opportunities to win the game in the homestand. The Sacramento game really stands out there, but it is what it is. And he drew up so many great plays down the stretch of the fourth quarter to help get Naz looks. And I thought the Timberwolves scripted play calling and what they were trying to run a lot, especially getting flare screens over the top for Naz. Running a ton of spread pick and roll, just not able to get the ball to the corners to open shooters quite enough. But, the Wolves were dealt a terrible deck and played the best hand they could. And it's just really unfortunate that the dealer pretty much took the cards and ripped them up and threw them and said, "You lost."
Yeah, perfectly said. Well said.
Just really unfortunate.
Yep, absolutely. Plenty more deep dive, including a little bit more Karl Anthony-Towns' injury talk, how that's going to impact the Wolves moving forward. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. All right, guys, when you start hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the job, right? Well, then LinkedIn Jobs is a no-brainer, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster, and it's for free. Now, I know when it comes to hiring, there's so many options to choose from, but LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's the only job board, because they got the biggest network to choose from with more than 1 billion professionals. And that's what makes LinkedIn the best and only place to hire. Because at the end of the day, LinkedIn is going to give you access to professionals you just can't find anywhere else. And they do all that while also making the process easy and intuitive. Think about it. Hiring for your next job is going to be easy when you have hundreds of quality candidates, right? So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate match within just 24 hours. So it's time to join the 2.5 million small businesses that are already using LinkedIn for hiring. Try it today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. LinkedIn, terms and conditions apply. All right, so last night I asked you, okay, what's going to change the most as far as their game plan goes with the X's and O's and all that stuff without Cat on the floor now this next 4 or 5 weeks or so? You said pretty unequivocally, hey, they're going to get a lot more pick and rolls going for Ant specifically, obviously, which makes sense. Did you see that as much as you thought you would tonight? And, what other ways did the game plan or strategy maybe look a little different on either end, if at all?
Yeah, I think that, the Timberwolves ran a ton of pick and roll last night, and that made a ton of sense when you consider the fact that, the Pacers are the worst pick and roll defense in the entire NBA. Mm-hmm. But when you look at a team like Cleveland, this is a team that is one that has a pretty good rim protector in Jared Allen. They also have Evan Mobley, who's been a really strong, pick and roll defender this year. And, these are the two teams, the Timberwolves and the Cavaliers, that are the best two defenses in the NBA in terms of defending pick and roll. Right. And it's just a tall task, to try to go against Cleveland. And it's even tougher when Kyle Anderson is out there on the backside of in the corner on the backside of these pick and rolls, and Cleveland's just sagging the low man into the paint to try to take away every part of Rudy Gobert. And he's just not a threat from the corner. And it's just one of those games where it's just really hard to justify having Kyle Anderson out there for his offense if he's not playing lockdown defense. And that was not necessarily the case tonight. But the, unfortunate part of that, I guess, is that you don't really get an opportunity to pick your matchups or to pull a different lever when your other lever is a guy like TJ Warren, who very much still needs to get into his I guess 100% capacity basketball playing shape, and how could he be in that shape right now? I mean, the last night was the first organized basketball game that he's played in since last season. Mm-hmm. And I thought the Timberwolves did a good enough job of I think trying to flow into other things. I think they did a great job of running some action out of the corner. I thought that Kyle Anderson himself did a good job of attacking smaller defenders off the dribble and getting into the paint and scoring. He had 10 points. And I think whether Kyle Anderson is starting or not, anytime he's a double-digit scorer and pretty efficient shooting, he was 5 of 9. I think you're going to take that. And I thought the Timberwolves also did a really good job of running flare screens over the top for Naz Reid to get him going. They really like to run flare screens for Naz, for him to either catch and shoot threes or for him to attack off the catch. And we also saw Naz Reid, much like we saw last night, start some of his actions in the corner and kind of curl off of pin down screens and catch the ball with a head of steam going towards the basket. That's certainly something that you like to see, especially if Gobert is the guy that's setting that screen, because it's just tougher to sag the low man in when you have a cleared empty corner, right? Because there's no one to slide down and pitch in on Gobert on the roll. And so I thought Mike Norrie did a good job of trying to create some of those plays and make the defense pick their poison between Gobert on the roll and Naz or Ant on the drive. And I thought the Timberwolves did a good enough job of making them pay for that. But, I just think it's really tough to score points effectively when they're just clogging the paint at the level that they did, right? Yeah. I mean, the Timberwolves shot less than 50% in the paint tonight. They shot 22 of 45. There were just a lot of bodies in there. And the Timberwolves, for their money, I guess, did a good job on the offensive glass. They had 7 offensive rebounds for 14 second chance points. That was another good way that they kind of combated the lack of spacing, I guess, is to be able to create second chance opportunities for themselves, which is always a good thing. And you would have liked to see them get to the free throw line a little bit more for how much they were down there on the drive. I thought Ant probably could have had 5, 6, 7 more free throw attempts in this game and didn't. Jaden certainly could have had a couple more free throw attempts in this game. But, again, I think the Timberwolves did a good enough job of creating some open 3-point looks. And when guys not named Naz Reid go 1 of 19 from 3,
yeah, I mean, come on,
any one of those 3-point looks, right, that go in and it's a little bit of a different game in terms of the score at the end of the game. And that I think is just going to be tough. The Timberwolves, I believe now are 15 of 55, which is, I have that number in front of me, which is 27% from downtown without Karl Anthony-Towns. And
so the last 2 games you're talking?
The last 2 games. Yep. And
mm-hmm.
so again, just a tough night to run pick and roll when you rely a lot on Ant to score out of pick and roll, and his legs were just as dead as they were tonight. And you have Cleveland, who is the number one defense in terms of allowing the most points per possession to ball handlers in the pick and roll. So again, just a really strong defensive team that, even down 3 guys, right? They were down Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, and Evan Mobley, 3 of their starters, and still found a way to cobble together enough to beat a really tough and hard-nosed and really strong willed Timberwolves team that I think deserved a lot better than what happened tonight. And it's just unfortunate now because Oklahoma City came back from a 10-point deficit at home at halftime and beat the Miami Heat. And so they're now in first place in the Western Conference. And it's unfortunate just because the Timberwolves have a much more difficult schedule than Oklahoma City. And it's hard to, I think, be honest with yourself and see the Timberwolves as the number 1 seed in the West by the end of the season, just with how tired they are. And now without Monte Morris, that's pretty tough. It doesn't sound like he's going to be ready to go in their next game. Hamstrings, I think you want to be as careful as you can with those. And if, not playing some guys because they're banged up to try to keep them fresh down the stretch so they're ready to go for the playoffs is what ends up making them the number 3 seed in the West. I think, I think that's okay, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said. No, you're absolutely right. And I will say this too. Okay, they're 1-1 now without Cat. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment here. Yeah, they lost tonight, but they did do a lot of good things just collectively now over these last 2 games to build off of and glean from. But you're certainly right. Call a spade a spade. There is a lot of things not going their way right now for sure. And certainly it stings a little bit more after a tough loss like we had tonight. How massive of an advantage, though, is it that Cat missed 51 games last year? And maybe why is that important from, like a team chemistry standpoint, if you will, for both the players and coaches too, I would think as well, because they should have some confidence without Cat after what they did last year. We know they can still win and be a dangerous team as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality, right? Is that I guess if, any of the 3 stars had to be out, I think the Timberwolves are most, equipped to be able to make up for not having Karl Anthony-Towns, just because I think what Ant does is so unique as a guy that's able to score off the dribble. And what Rudy Gobert is able to do is arguably the best rim protector in the history of basketball. I think that it's just much more difficult to replace that when you have somewhat of a Karl Anthony-Towns facsimile in Naz Reid, and the fact that he was able to give you 34 points tonight. You also have Kyle Anderson, who can slide into playing more of his natural position at the 4. Again, you have TJ Warren to come and get you 5, 7, 10 points off the bench. So it's really just the 3-point volume. I think that they're really going to miss from Karl Anthony-Towns. I don't have the number in front of me of what Karl is shooting this season. I believe it was 42% the last time that I checked. Yeah, 42.3% from 3 this season.
Yeah,
and he's certainly a threat out there. And they really just miss having a bigger body inside, I think, at the 5. Naz Reid has really improved a ton as a perimeter defender, but I think he still struggles quite a bit when he's isolated as the 5 against a really big center like we saw in the 4th quarter and overtime against Jared Allen.
Yeah.
And that's okay because he hasn't been asked to play that position pretty much at all this season. And now him being kind of thrust into that role is a lot different. And it's just going to be interesting to see what happens with the Timberwolves. And it'd be interesting to see if the Timberwolves maybe look at a 10-day contract for another center, because they do have another empty roster spot, and they do.
What's going on with Luka Garza? Is he still in the mix or the plan?
He's not much of a defensive center. He can certainly give you 7 to 10 points depending. But
put some respect on Luka's name. Come on now. No,
I will put all the respect on the world on his offensive game. No question about it. But yeah, it's just another body to throw in there for even 5 or 6 minutes at the 5 to be a more defensive minded center, especially in minutes where Kyle Anderson is not on the floor, I think would be interesting. And Kyle Anderson has played some minutes as a small ball five. Timberwolves fans might remember that from the Memphis series 2 years ago. He guarded Karl Anthony-Towns as a small ball five quite a bit in that series. And, who knows if we start to see a little bit more of that here down the stretch of this season, if that's what the game ends up calling for.
All right, stick around. We're going to preview this Lakers game coming up Sunday night. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Guys, Prize Picks is without a doubt the most fun I've had playing daily fantasy because you can win up to 100 times your money this basketball season. That means with as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn your $10 into $1,000. And it's so easy to play. I can make my picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Prize Picks also now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. And here's my favorite part. With the Prize Picks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. That makes Prize Picks the only daily fantasy platform around that offers you extra injury insurance to give you that extra peace of mind. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnNBA at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a 100% bonus match up to $100. Okay, our Monte Morris watch, our new favorite bit and segment, quickly turned into the TJ Warren watch. So Morris out with that tight hammy, as you mentioned, maybe out for another game or two. TJ Warren all of a sudden getting some real run right now. How's he fit into the equation? We haven't talked about him yet. What's he known for? What's he do well? And I guess, is he a guy potentially that could stick around in 2025, just knowing what you know about the roster?
Yeah, TJ Warren is a bucket getter, man. He played really, really well, albeit 4 years ago in the NBA bubble for the Indiana Pacers. Some people remember that 2-week run that he went on where he had a 50-point game, a few 30-point games, I think maybe a 40-point game in there. And he's a guy that can score in isolation. He's really comfortable playing out of the corners, playing off the catch. We saw that tonight. He had a couple of nice little baseline attacks. He can post up and face up against smaller defenders, which is something that you want to see. And he can shoot the three, can spread the floor a little bit. I think the Timberwolves would probably not rely on him to be a 3-point shooter, just because I think he's kind of always generally lived in that 33 to 35% range. So certainly capable of knocking him down, but a shot I think the defense is okay with him shooting compared to him kind of attacking off the catch and getting into the paint with the little floater shots or mid-range shots. And is certainly a guy that fits into that 0.5 mentality. I think that Jim Pete is talking about in a really, small role like this. I think he's kind of had a reputation a little bit as a ball stopper in previous stops, and he's been, one of the more focal points of the offense. But I think in a much more scaled down role like this, where all you're asking him to do is kind of play off the catch, space to the corners, play a little bit in the dribble handoff game with Rudy Gobert. He might be able to run some pick and rolls with Rudy Gobert and get into the mid-range and score, as he gets more comfortable, and is certainly a guy I think the Timberwolves will keep around for the rest of this season based on what we've seen from him in these 2 games. And a guy that, ultimately is going to be able to be that number 2 or number 3 scorer on the floor for you when Anthony Edwards is not on the floor. And that's what we saw in the first half of this game in that second quarter, right? He and Naz Reid in that second quarter had 11 of the team's first 16 points and were a big part of why the Timberwolves, I think, were a +8 or a +9 in that first 4 or 5 minutes of the second quarter. And they really kind of grabbed control of the game, which was really, really nice to see from the 2 of those guys just playing off one another and being really unselfish, right? And TJ Warren has a really good understanding of spacing as well. I think that he really knows where he is on the floor impacts guys who have the ball or the scorers on the floor. He did a really good job of staying deep in the corner or flying out above the break when Naz Reid wanted to post up out of a short corner opportunity against a small guy on him. And I think really has an understanding of when he needs to come to the ball, when a guy is stuck and needs an outlet, needs an option. And he's really good at attacking broken floor situations. It's going to make the right decision of when to attack, when to kick out. And just a guy that I think fits in really nicely with with what the Timberwolves want to do offensively, and isn't going to be a guy, I don't think, that's going to try to do too much, especially considering that he's on a 10-day contract at the new team. I think he's just going to try to make the smart play every time. He's a 9-year veteran. I think you can count on a 9-year veteran like that. And it's very clear that the Timberwolves are prioritizing veterans and veteran leadership and guys who have been through it before with these last 2 roster spots. And TJ Warren certainly fits the bill in that. And he's played alongside some really talented players in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in Brooklyn and Phoenix. And so certainly a guy that has some pedigree and has been a really solid scorer throughout his entire NBA career. And the Timberwolves can certainly use more scoring here for however long he's going to be here.
Yeah, some encouraging things to lean on for sure from the small sample size from him.
And then one more thing. He doesn't move. He doesn't look like he's moving very well defensively. That was something that I did not touch on. And they're certainly not bringing him in for his defense, but I do think that you might see the Timberwolves play a little bit more zone if TJ Warren's in the game, just as a guy who has some length at 6'8", 220 pounds. I think they'd like to see him rebound a little bit more, because I don't know that he's going to get out and run in transition. He just doesn't move as well as he used to. But yeah, certainly more of an offensive minded guy and a guy I think that is fit in pretty well in these 2 games.
All right, not enough time for our Lakers preview, but make sure you join us after that one. That's Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. tip-off. We'll close with this. More impressive feat last night. Ant's game-sealing block that's going to be on the highlight reel forever, or the fact the dude scored 44 points and didn't have a single turnover. I mean, how's that even possible? Tied the franchise record I heard in the pregame with KG. 44 points, 0 turnovers. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the turnovers, considering how much he had the ball in high leverage situations. Yeah, because the block is just one moment it's one play, right?
Right.
And it's certainly incredible, especially considering that he wanted to make up for missing that free throw. But I think prolonged success over the course of the 38, 40 minutes, whatever it was that he played, and how good he was down the stretch in clutch time offensively, having to create so much for himself. I certainly think that's the more impressive feat for Ant.
Agreed. Yeah, Wolves drop a tough one tonight in OT in Cleveland, 113-104. 4 more road games to go. That continues with this big one coming up in LA versus the Lakers this Sunday. Tip-off for that one again, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. As always, huge shout out to everyone that joined us on the stream. You guys are the best. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Quick reminder, go check out all of Jack's work on X at Jared Borman 13, and make sure you check out him on the Minnesota Basketball Party with the full crew. Sam Ekstrom, Gophers legend Ron Johnson, Carol Evans, Reggie Wilson. That's each and every Wednesday afternoon. Ben Beacon, of course, always ripping it up over on the Locked On Wolves podcast each and every day as well. That'll do it for us tonight. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.